Hey there, Dangar Stu here. It's about a week now until winter starts in Australia, and given it's a nice day, I thought I'd take the opportunity to get out on the water and do another video on sort of boat handling and seamanship. A bit of a follow-up to that original beginner's guide to driving a boat video. This video won't be quite as structured as that first video. I really want to just touch on a few things that I missed when I did that one. Some of the things I think will actually be a little bit simpler, some of the things a little bit more advanced. One thing I didn't talk about in the original video was the paddle wheel effect. And this is an effect where a propeller, a sort of screw type propeller, as it pushes the boat forward through the water, it also has a paddle wheel effect where it acts like a traditional old school paddle wheel and tries to push the boat either port or starboard. Most boats have a right-hand propeller or a clockwise propeller, and that will then, as you're travelling forward, it'll try and push the stern to starboard, and then when you go into reverse, it'll try and pull the stern to port. If you try and pull up to a wharf on the starboard side of the boat, even if you put a bit of starboard helm and go reverse, it'll try to pull the boat, the stern of the boat in towards the wharf, but the paddle wheel effect will actually send it away. So you'll often find it won't tuck in as strongly as it does when you pull up to a wharf on the port side. The most common example of this is just pulling up to a pontoon. So now I'll come up to this pontoon starboard to, and if you come in about 20 degrees to it, pretty standard sort of berthing manoeuvre. And then if I go astern and go in reverse, the stern will pull in. Because you've got so much helm on an outboard, it is pretty good at that. But if we then do that port side too, that paddle wheel effect will pull the stern in even stronger against the wharf. Another reasonably closely related concept is using the throttle to tighten the turning circle. When a boat's going quite slowly, it'll generally have quite a large turning circle, and by giving it a bit of throttle, you'll notice the turning circle will tighten dramatically. So coming into here, rather than doing this sort of 3-point turn idea this time, I'll just use a bit of throttle. So you can be heading into a particular pontoon. I want to go port side too, so I'm looking to do a 180 degree turn. And if I do it slowly, this boat actually turns quite tightly anyway. You can end up with quite a wide arc. The point being though, if you're going slow, you go to make a turn, you don't actually think you're going to turn sharply enough. A bit of throttle will really bring the boat round quickly. The trick there obviously is if it looks like you're not going to make a turn, be careful with throttle, because if you don't make it, you're only going to hit whatever you're going to hit faster and harder. So it's just something to be aware of, experiment with when you've got a bit of space. But once you get a feel for how your boat responds, how it turns, when you give a little squirt of the throttle, it becomes a really good technique to sort of have in your arsenal of boat handling manoeuvres. In the original video, I think we talked a bit about giving way to starboard. So it's very much like coming into a roundabout. For cars on your right, you give way, cars on your left give way to you. So same idea. But things get a little bit different in that they're not always clear-cut situations like 90-degree crossings. And an important thing to be aware of is that boats don't have indicators like a car, like your flashes. And the best way to do that, to indicate in a boat, is to make a move really early and make it quite decisive. So if you're coming head on to someone, don't sort of just veer a little bit to starboard, because you might find they do something similar. It's actually best to look at someone, make quite an obvious turn, then straight away they'll go, right, I can see which way you're going, I can now go the opposite way. So just think of indicating in a boat as being making a really clear and deliberate action that can't be missed. If you think about a boat in waves, it sort of does this sort of constant corkscrewing in waves anyway. So what you think might be a turn that's obvious to someone else may not look very distinctive from another boat. So just make sure that person can't miss it. This Mercury's misfiring badly. It's only 6 months old. Probably dodgy fuel. There's a ferry coming up here now. It's only a little boat, doesn't make a lot of wash, but I do get questions about crossing wash. So what I'll do now is put the camera up in the bow, we'll film that, and then I'll explain what's going on. So the idea with crossing some wash really is, depending on what speed you're going, slow down. If you hit wash fast enough to get airborne, you know, you're going to go flying, things are going to go flying, people are going to fall off their seats and get hurt. Boat's probably strong enough to handle it, although it's not going to do it any good, but the people inside the boat generally aren't. So I would slow down. You don't want to have no speed, you know, you don't want to just sort of be at the mercy of the wash, so I'd probably slow down to maybe around the 10 knot mark. You know, you're still moving, you're not doing 4 knots, you're not sort of crawling, but you're not doing 20-25 knots. Then I would try and hit the wash. So as you see the wave coming out, it's going to come out at an angle from the boat, but then you want to hit it at a further sort of 30-45 degree angle. I don't like going straight over wash. I think that's when you sort of cop the most bouncing, because you've actually got a steeper wave. If you trace a line across a wave and you sort of come over it in this way, you're actually drawing a much more gentle curve. So the angle you hit is very important. Don't hit it too fast. And what you can also do is, just as you get to a bit of wash, you can accelerate just a little bit, just to lift the bow of the boat up. So you're starting from sort of, you know, maybe 6 knots, still only hit it at 10 knots, but you're in the process of accelerating as you get to it. So you can get the bow up, hit it at a shallow angle, hit it at a sensible speed, and that's pretty much all there is to it. You've probably seen those advertising campaigns, you know, the alcohol and boating don't mix. And here's why. Because, you know, you're in your boat, you've got your beer, you go to take off, suddenly it's gone everywhere. You know, nobody wants that. Particularly when it's not my boat. But what's really common is a lot of boats have this style of handrail on their windscreen. And so if you put it on the gunnel here, you can slide it back until the neck sits in there, and then you're fine. That's the type of seamanship tips you get on Dango Marine. Alright, now I'm going to talk a little bit about doing some shallow water running. So I'm going to swap into the green machine for that, and then we'll go find a sandbar or some shallow patch somewhere. In the original boat driving video, I didn't talk much about safety equipment either, so I'll go through a little bit of that this time. Because this boat's under 4.8 metres long, it's 4.6. By law in New South Wales, you have to wear a life jacket when you're on your own. So I'll whack that on before we get going. Mostly to avoid a fine, but you know, it's the way it goes. Now I'll just go through the list of other things you're supposed to carry with you. First up here, we've got a little dry powder fire extinguisher. Then here I've got a fire bucket with a lanyard, so a bailing bucket as well. If some of the decks are covered, you're also required to have a bilge pump, which is fitted down there, and then the anchor's rigged up there. Here I've just got a paddle clipped to the side of the seat here in these little white clips, so it's nice and easy to get out. You're also required by law to have one of these stickers saying how many people can be in the boat. Carry a waterproof torch and some sort of sound signal. In this case it's just a little Pegasus whistle. That's everything you have to carry in enclosed waters by law. If you go offshore you start to need to carry other things like flares, V-sheets, water, all this sort of stuff. But that's all you need if you're just boating in a lake or a river. Alright, let's head out again and find some shallow water. Change of plan because the battery in the green machine's flat. I left the nav lights on last night, so I have to go and charge that up. But we'll push on anyway. When it comes to driving in shallow water, first tip really is avoid it, you know. Most channels in popular waterways we marked, so you can look at your port and starboard markers, your cardinal markers, just ways of knowing that you're in a deep channel. But failing that, particularly with rivers, what you'll find is that as a river bends, the inside of the bend will silt up and the outside of the bend will scour out and be quite deep. If the water's not very clear and it's hard to see how shallow it really is, the first thing you'll notice is just the prop digging through mud or whatever. You'll either hit a rock if you're unlucky, or you'll just hear it straining when you're in mud. And then the obvious thing then is to trim up a little bit. Now, the other thing you want to look at is, why is the water shallow here? if I keep heading in a straight line, is it only going to get shallower and shallower? So your best option really is to reverse up, find deep water again, and sort of proceed from there. But if you are in a shallow area, there's a few channels around here that on really low tide, they're quite shallow, and you need to get through it. So heading through it, you can trim the motor up, that's good. The other thing you can actually do is get everybody on one side of the boat. As the boat sort of tilts, the leg of the motor will come into shallow water again, and the V of the hull, you'll sort of end up like this. So you end up with a flatter profile, and the keel won't be as deep in the water. So they're just a couple of things you can do to help if you're stuck in shallow water and you do need to go forward rather than backing up into deep water again.
So that's all I've got time for today, unfortunately. It's really just a collection of techniques and tips that I didn't include originally in the first boat driving video. Next week we'll pick up with a video on painting the Tohatsu. I was hoping to have that ready for this weekend, but there's a few delays there as well. And then after that we'll get back into the Evinrude 150. Alright, well take care and I'll catch you soon. See ya.